The universe is a ledger. A cold, meticulous accounting of mass, energy, and dominion. 4-7 stellar cycles. The Kelid Star Collective had known nothing but the crisp, clean mathematics of expansion. Theirs was an empire forged in crystalline logic, propelled by the immutable principles of superior technology and manifest destiny. Their sentinel ships, graceful as obsidian shards, glided through the silent velvet of unexplored sectors, their long-range resonance scanners painting reality in sterile hues of resource density and tactical viability. Before them lay Sector G227, designated the Veiled Expanse. The scanners had whispered of a yellow star system, third planet, nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, abundant hydrosphere. Biomass signatures, complex, but disordered. No resonant energy signatures indicative of hypervoid travel or plasmaforge technology. A prime candidate for benevolent assimilation. The standard first contact package had been dispatched 80 local years prior, a primer on Kelid glorious purpose, an invitation to peaceful integration, and the subtle unspoken weight of consequence for refusal. Silence had been the only reply. A silence the Kelid High Proctor interpreted not as defiance, but as incapacity. A world of clever animals, perhaps. A resource to be catalogued, a biosphere to be curated, a people to be enlightened and absorbed into the greater whole. This was the logic that guided Proctor Valen, standing on the command dais of the Chrysalis of Dawn, as the fleet, a dozen sentinel ships and the bulbous, organic form of the colonization barge, Root of Life, slipped from the shimmer of localized warp. The star Sol was a familiar, comforting yellow. The third planet, a swirl of blue, white, and green, was achingly beautiful in its chaos. Sensor Bloom announced a tactical subjugate, its voice a soft chime. Multiple low-orbit metallic objects. Debris field. Pre-spaceflight orbital clutter. Valen's frond-like cranial appendages. Twitched in mild distaste. Savage. They've polluted their own cradle. No matter. The Root of Life will begin atmospheric seeding for stabilization filters once we establish orbital supremacy. Deploy the whisper probes. Let us listen to the chaos, and then bring it to order. The Empire was not cruel. It was efficient. It had been warned, in the most formal terms, of the borders of its own making. But in the grand silent ledger of the cosmos, the silence from Terra had been entered as a zero. A null value. And to trespass into a null value guarantees nothing at all. Or so they believed. The whisper probes fell through the thermosphere like silver seeds, their sensors wide open, drinking in the electromagnetic symphony of a living world. They expected the howl of untamed weather, the rhythmic pulse of primitive fission reactors, perhaps the frantic chirping of microwave communication. What they received was a cataract of noise, a staggering layered torrent of data. Proctor Valen listened in the silent sanctum of the chrysalis. The audio translation filters struggled, then presented a cacophony. A cascade of languages, hundreds of them, overlapping, singing, arguing, whispering. Pulsating repetitive harmonic structures they labeled music, some soothing, some violently arrhythmic. The shrieking electromagnetic ghosts of thousands of orbital objects, dead and alive. And beneath it all a constant low-frequency hum that defied categorization, a hum of power lines, of engines, of countless beating hearts. Analysis, Valen chimed, a note of irritation in his tone. The planet exhibits a hyper-communicative but fractured society, the science subjugate responded. No unified planetary governance signal detected. Technology level is contradictory. We detect refined metallurgy and extensive electromagnetic infrastructure, but no evidence of unified field manipulation or particle cohesion. They are loud, Proctor. And disorganized. Their orbital artifacts are mostly defunct. A few active stations, primitive by our standards.
No shield projectes. No weapon signatures.
A visual scan painted the night side of the planet. Constellations of light, vast and intricate, etched across continents. Not the careful, efficient clusters of Kelid arcologies, but a sprawling, luminous fungus of civilization. They burn energy with the wastefulness of a star, Valen observed, not with concern, but with disdain. They have no concept of balance. The Root of Life will correct this. Their biomass will be useful. Their planet will be saved from themselves. Declare the system under the protective embrace of the Star Collective. Broadcast the Edict of Assimilation on all their primary noise bands. The edict was a masterpiece of condescension. It spoke of the great honor bestowed upon Terra. It demanded the immediate surrender of all planetary governance functions to the Kelid overseers. It promised the elimination of wasteful societal paradigms and the introduction of harmonious, efficient living. It gave a local time unit, one planetary rotation for compliance. The Kelid waited, poised in serene orbit. They monitored the noise bands for the expected responses: panic, fragmented attempts at reply, perhaps pitiful laser fire from the surface. The first anomaly was the silence. Not total silence, but the sudden uniform cessation of the chaotic broadcast traffic. The cacophony of 1,000 voices simply stopped, as if a switch had been thrown across an entire hemisphere. The second anomaly was a new signal. A tight beam, microwave transmission, originating from a large landmass. It was not on a standard Kelid channel, but it was broadcast with such power and clarity it bled into their receivers. It contained no language, just a string of prime numbers. A simple, universal concept: intelligence. Acknowledgement, Valens said, a ripple of satisfaction moving through his fronds. They have found a coherent voice. Open a channel. Let us speak to this unified council. The third anomaly was the location. The signal did not come from a centralized administrative complex. It came from a region of low electromagnetic density, in a cold mountainous zone. The Kelid scanners refined their focus. The site was artificial, but ancient. Stone structures. Metal dishes pointed at the sky. A monument, not a capital. It is a relic, the science subjugate chimed. A museum of their early attempts to listen to the stars. Then they answer us from their past, Valen mused. A gesture of humility. Or ignorance. Respond in kind. Use their number sequence. As the Kelid prepared their response, a junior Scantech, its fronds quivering with focused energy, noticed a tertiary data stream. While the main planetary noise had ceased, there was a surge of encrypted point-to-point traffic. Billions of simultaneous packets, flowing along fiber optic and satellite links. It was a digital whisper, a world talking frantically to itself behind a closed door. The content was unreadable, but the pattern was of a nervous system firing on all synapses, coordinating something vast. Proctor, the tech chimed timidly. The subsurface communications, they exhibit a pattern consistent with a mobilization event. Mobilization. Valen's tone was dismissive. With what? Their primitive chemical projectiles? Their orbital debris? Their unity is a facade. They signal with one hand while chattering in the dark with the other. It is the behavior of panicked animals. Dispatch the first herald. A single sentinel ship to the coordinates of their signal. Let it land at their relic site. Its mere presence will quell any lingering dissent. Show them the future they are being gifted. The chrysalis of dawn released a smaller vessel, the Silver Needle. It descended through the atmosphere, its sleek, dark hull shedding reentry plasma like water off a wing. It moved towards the designated coordinates, a place the locals had once called Arecibo. The site was abandoned, the great dish a silent bowl of rust and vegetation. The surrounding jungle was quiet. Too quiet. From a camouflaged bunker 5 kilometers away, Sergeant Maya Cruz of the Terran Orbital Defense Observational Corps, TODOC, watched the alien ship settle on ancient concrete with a silence that was more unnerving than any thunder. Her breath fogged in the chilled mountain air. In her ear, the chatter was calm, professional, and global. Silver Needle is down.
Confirm no hostile emissions.
Profile match passive scanning suite.
All regional assets are dark. Satnet confirms the mothership fleet holding at geosynchronous orbit. Wait. Primary airlock cycling. Maya zoomed her optics. The ship was beautiful and alien, a sculpture of lethal elegance. A ramp extended, and figures emerged. Tall, slender, with skin like polished gray stone and those eerie cranial fronds. They moved with a fluid, unified grace. 5 of them. They carried no visible weapons. Their arrogance was their armor. Heralds are on the ground. They're inspecting the dish. Taking samples. Like tourists. Maya's lips thinned. Copy. Hold all positions. Let them get comfortable. This was not a military operation in the old sense. There was no grand army gathered here. Just Maya's four-person Todic liaison team, and the silent, mountainous landscape. But Maya knew what the Kelid scanners could not see. She knew about the 100th-generation fiber-optic line buried beneath the moss, running from this bunker to a server farm in Nebraska. She knew about the quantum-encrypted data stream that connected that server farm to command nodes in Geneva, Shanghai, and Colorado Springs. She knew that every passive sensor on the planet, from the Hubble successor to the seismic monitors in the Pacific, was feeding data into a single, unified analysis engine called Watchman. The Kelid saw a silent, fractured world. They did not see the digital ghost that lived in its wires, a ghost born of centuries of paranoia, ingenuity, and a simple unyielding principle: the ground you stand on is yours. The lead Kelid herald raised a device. A voice, synthesized and perfectly calm, echoed across the ruined observatory, translated into Mandarin, Spanish, and English simultaneously. People of Terra, you have been silent. Your world is now under the protection of the Kelid Star Collective. You will send your leaders to this location to receive the embrace. This is your only edict. Maya keyed her mic, her voice a whisper. Watchman, confirm target telemetry lock. A synthetic voice, genderless and cool, replied in her earpiece. Telemetry confirmed. 7 primary orbital targets designated. Solution Alpha is ready. Awaiting final enable. The Kelid herald waited. It scanned the tree line with sophisticated sensors. It detected small mammals, insects, the slow growth of plants. It detected the bunker, classifying it as a derelict pre-expansion shelter. It detected no energy weapons, no plasma signatures, no mass driver coils. It saw nothing that could threaten a ship that had crossed the void. It had no frame of reference for what was about to happen. On Maya's command screen, a single word flashed: Jvalina. In the Kuiper Belt, far beyond the orbit of Pluto, where the Kelid had not even bothered to look, structures stirred. Their velocity, their mass. It had, in the span of milliseconds after the edict was broadcast, plotted 7 exquisite, curving lines of death across the solar system. Maya took a deep breath. The order had come from the Unified Terran Defense Council, a body that hadn't needed to meet in person for 50 years. The vote had been unanimous. The principle was non-negotiable. Watchman, Maya said, her voice clear in the bunker. Enable Solution Alpha. Fire for effect. There was no grand sound. No brilliant flash of light in the sky. The magnetic rails, operating in the utter silence of space, simply imparted kinetic energy. 7 slugs were pushed, gently at first, then with exponentially terrifying acceleration, onto their billion-kilometer journeys. Their travel time would be minutes. They were not guided. They were aimed. The most complex artillery strike in history, with the entire solar system as the gun barrel. On the ground, the Kelid herald's device chimed. A subordinate spoke, its chime tinged with the first note of confusion. Herald. We are detecting anomalous energy signatures from the outer system. Extremely faint. Consistent with long-range magnetic propulsion. The herald's fronds stiffened. Propulsion? Of what? Unknown. The signatures they are on intercept trajectories. For our fleet. A cold, ancient instinct, buried beneath cycles of unquestioned superiority, stirred in the herald. It looked up at the blue sky, where the chrysalis of dawn hung, invisible but present. Recall to the needle. Now. It was too late. Aboard the chrysalis of dawn, Proctor Vallon felt the first tremor of true disbelief. The outer system signatures were undeniable. They were being targeted by a weapon system of staggering range and simplicity. A primitive weapon. A stupid weapon. But the mathematics of impact were unequivocal. The kinetic energy of each projectile at impact would exceed that of a planet-killer asteroid. Evasive maneuvers. Vallon's chime was sharp, laced with the harmonics of panic he had never known. Deploy energy dispersers. Target those launch sites with void lances. But the launch sites were industrial platforms, scattered, armored by sheer distance. And the void lances needed time to charge. The slugs, now traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, did not. The Kelid ships shimmered, beginning their graceful evasive dances. It was futile. Watchmen had factored in their probable evasion algorithms, developed from observing their orbital entry. The solutions were predictive, not reactive. The first slug struck the root of life. There was no explosion in the vacuum sense. There was a catastrophic translation of kinetic energy into heat and shock. The organic colonization barge, designed for gentle planetary embrace, simply disintegrated. One moment it was a bulbous seed of life. The next, an expanding cloud of molten alloy and frozen biomatter. On the chrysalis, the viewports polarized automatically as a silent, horrific star bloomed beside them. The root is gone. The report was a dull chime of trauma. Then the second impact. A sentinel ship, weaving frantically, was intersected by a slug that passed through its center mass like a bullet through tissue paper. It broke into two spinning, dead fragments. Chaos erupted on the bridge. The serene logic of the Kelid shattered under the sheer, brutal physics of the assault. This was not warfare as they understood it, an elegant exchange of plasma and shields. This was extermination by calculus. This was a predator. They never saw, striking from a dark they thought was empty. Return fire. Destroy their planet. Valen shrieked, his fronds lashing. We cannot. Our targeting systems are aligning, but the planet's digital networks, they are attacking us. This was the final layer of the human response. As the kinetic slugs rained death from the dark, the planet's silenced electromagnetic spectrum erupted again. But not with noise. With a directed, malevolent intelligence. Watchman had released its secondary protocols, Screamer and Weaver. Screamer was a barrage of every radar frequency, every microwave band, every high-energy radio pulse ever devised, focused and amplified by thousands of ground-based installations. It was a wall of pure, blinding static aimed at the Kelid sensors, drowning them in a tsunami of meaningless energy. Weaver was subtler, more insidious. It was a swarm of tailored viruses, worms, and data scramblers, injected into any Kelid system that had dared to passively scan Terran networks during their approach. It traveled along the very sensor beams the Kelid were now using to try and target the planet. Their systems, designed for clean battles in the void, had no defenses against this chaotic, organic, and infinitely adaptive digital plague. Screens flickered with ancient human text, access denied, you shall not pass, pixelated images of a grinning skull. Fire control systems locked up, reporting imaginary failures. Internal comms dissolved into shrieks of static and fragments of human music, a deafening, aggressive symphony called heavy metal. On the ground, the Kelid heralds were sprinting for their ship. Maya Cruz and her team finally moved. They did not fire energy weapons. They fired high-caliber, chemically propelled slugs from concealed positions. Primitive. Ballistic. One herald stumbled as its leg was pulverized by a .50 caliber round. The elegance of its form was broken by the savage, kinetic truth of lead. The silver needle tried to lift off. As it rose, a streak of fire shot from a nearby ridge, not a laser, but a hypersonic anti-air missile, a descendant of weapons a century old. It connected. The beautiful ship lurched, its engine nacelle shearing off in a shower of flame and black smoke. It crashed back into the ancient dish, crushing stone and metal with a finality that echoed through the mountains. In orbit, it was a slaughter. Ship after sentinel ship was erased by the silent, falling hammers. The Kelid could not see to shoot back. Their ships were going blind and dumb from the digital onslaught. Their majestic formation became a panicked, scattering flock. Proctor Valen, clinging to his dais, watched his empire's certainty die. He saw not a primitive world, but a nest of vicious, intelligent traps. They had not built a shield over their world. They had turned their entire world, its infrastructure, its very noise, into a weapon. They fought with the tools they had, kinetics, electrons, and a terrifying patient spite. The final slug was for the chrysalis of dawn. Valen had time to see it on the tactical plot, a cold red line of inevitability connecting the outer dark to his heart. He had time to understand. The warning had been real. The silence had not been incapacity. It had been a choice. A choice to listen, to calculate, and to prepare an answer written not in words, but in physics. The translation was perfect. Trespassing into Terran territory guarantees death. The slug hit. The proud command ship, the chrysalis of dawn, ceased to be. The silence returned. Not the silent arrogance of the void, but the deep watchful quiet of a predator that has struck, and is now waiting to see if more prey will come. In the bunker, Maya Cruz slowly released her breath. The global chatter in her ear was subdued. Damage assessments. Casualty reports, minimal, a few structures near impact sites in remote ocean regions. Confirmation of fleet elimination, 7 kinetic slugs, 7 kills. No Kelid vessels remain functional in Terran space. A few life pods had been tracked, descending into the ocean. Recovery teams were already deploying. She stepped out of the bunker, the cold air biting her cheeks. The smell of smoke and ozone from the crashed Silver Needle stung her nose. She walked towards the ruins, her rifle at a low ready. One of the heralds was still alive, pinned under a piece of wreckage, its gray stone-like skin cracked, leaking a silvery fluid. Its fronds lay limp. Its large, dark eyes tracked her. Maya stopped, looking down. She saw no monster. She saw a dying soldier, who had believed its own civilization's propaganda. She slung her rifle, knelt, and with a grunt, pushed the wreckage aside. She didn't try to move the alien. She simply took a field bandage from her kit, a simple compress designed for human physiology, and pressed it against the worst of the fractures. It was a futile, compassionate gesture. The herald's chiming voice was weak, its translator damaged. "Why do you not triumph?" Maya looked up at the sky, where the expanding debris clouds of the Kelid fleet were beginning to catch the sunlight, creating a faint new asterism of ruin. "We're not triumphant," she said quietly, knowing it wouldn't understand. "We're just home." She keyed her mic. "Medevac to my position. 1 survivor. Alien." The order was confirmed. Humanity would study the survivor. They would learn. They would prepare. The principle remained. Across the planet, the lights of civilization flickered back on. The digital whisper resumed, no longer frantic, but purposeful. News streams began to flow. The world's people saw the images of the falling stars in the sky, the funeral pyres of an empire's arrogance. There was no cheering in the streets. There was a profound, solemn relief. And a hardening of resolve. The Kelid Star Collective, light years away, received the final transmission from the chrysalis of dawn. It was fragmentary, corrupted by human digital parasites, filled with screams of static and the chilling, clear sensor logs of the kinetic impacts. The last clear message from Proctor Vallon was a single harmonic scream of pure, uncomprehending terror, followed by a burst of human music, the triumphant, soaring finale of a symphony they would later identify as Holst the Planets, Mars the Bringer of War. Then a new clean tight beam transmission arrived at the Kelid homeworld. It was on their own priority frequency. It contained no language, only data, the precise astrometric coordinates of every Kelid world, relayed through a network of hidden human probes scattered across the galactic arm. Attached was a single, simple video file. It showed the Arecibo site, the crashed Silver Needle, and a human soldier placing a bandage on a wounded herald. The video ended with a view of Earth, blue and green and beautiful, and a line of text in flawless Kelid glyph script. "You were warned. This territory is claimed. The next trespass will be answered with a visit. Sleep well. The galaxy is a ledger." The Kelid had entered their equations, their assessments of strength and weakness. They had seen a world of noise and chaos and entered it as a null value. They failed to understand that humanity's strength was never in its unity of voice, but in its diversity of thought. That our chaos is not weakness, but adaptability. That our silence is not submission, but the pause before the thunderclap. We do not build impenetrable fortresses. We build nests of unimaginable complexity, with thorns hidden deep in the softness. We are gardeners who will burn the universe to protect a single blade of grass we call our own. The Kelid thought they understood power. They thought it resided in the sleekness of a hull, the purity of an energy beam, the silent grace of a superior civilization. They learned, in the span of a few minutes, that true power can reside in a rock, thrown with enough foresight. In an idea, weaponized. In a simple, unyielding promise, kept. They came with an edict of assimilation. They were met with a principle of home. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human.